This guy is the worst ambassador, perhaps, in the history of the golf ambassador.
Why do you say that? Why?
So, Cobra guy playing TaylorMade driver. He's been a Flight Scope ambassador forever. And how many pictures, videos, whatever you got of him toting a Foresight GC quad for the LA Golf ambassador team, and he's played a Project X. I'm guessing he doesn't drive a Bentley or fly NetJets.
I bet he drives a Bentley. What is up, everybody? No putts given. How you living? Tony and Chris, we're back at GolfSpy T at GolfSpy C. Find us, follow us, ask us questions. Tony, we're wearing blue hats and blue shirts today. What happened?
You know, I'm very disappointed in myself. I think I wore this hat last week. I tried and mix it up a little bit. I just think you did. It's terrible. Terrible. Need get some new hats with maybe one with some numbers on it. Is that an area code?
No, 773 is the longest hole at my home course. Par 5. It's 773 yards.
Did they sell that hat in the pro shop? Or?
They do. They actually do. I made it myself.
Made that in your head.
I just write down note. Yeah. Next week I'm going to have one that's like 184, my favorite par 3 or something. I don't know.
Maybe that'll be like the new way we give away Japanese head covers is you'll just show up with a hat with numbers on it, and somebody's got to figure out what those numbers actually are.
Oh, man. Well, it's a big week here, Tony. Big week. Big week. Most wanted driver. We always start at the top, the bang. Most people are excited about it. So we got all of that data to kind of go through with people today, and playing golf under the influence, Tony. Not the influence you're thinking, or maybe I'm thinking, but a different kind of influence involving three-dimensional objects.
That hat will start with a dot, like 0.8 something.
Yeah, exactly. Nope, we're talking about pyramids of influence and, some of the things going on in the world, and how on earth do we make sense of these, and what do we do? But we're going to get there. We'll get to that stuff here in a minute. Most wanted driver, Tony. Let's just dive right in. We're going to talk kind of category by category, try to give you a brief overview. Obviously, the article goes way more in-depth on some of this stuff, but who won? We'll start with the winners. Who won?
Our top overall pick being sort of, we have 3 classes of metrics. We have distance, accuracy, and forgiveness. To arrive at an overall winner, we aggregate those. We skew a little bit, not super heavy, but a little bit towards distance because this is a driver. And I think it's fair to assume that most people are buying distance first and looking at some other stuff ancillary to that. But we split it out if you want to look at that other stuff. But yeah, to dive in, our most wanted driver, 2023 best overall. Ding, ding, ding. TaylorMade Stealth Plus.
Stealth 2.
Plus. Yeah, Stealth 2 Plus. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Forgetting. Yep. I need a hat with the numbers on it so I know what's up. Stealth 2 Plus. Runner-up. Cobra Aerojet 1, original Aerojet LS,
the first regional airline. Yep.
And, yes, and just to make sure we cover all the bases, finishing in 3rd place, the TaylorMade, or excuse me, wow, we're off to an auspicious start today.
You were under
Titleist. I'm on fire. Titleist TSR 3. So if we call it Aerojet 1, we've got a 1, 2, and a 3.
Stealth 2 Plus, podium, gold. Stealth 2 Plus. 2nd place, Cobra Aerojet LS. And 3rd place, TSR 3 from Titleist. That's your overall. When we have these overall rankings, people always lose it. Well, this one, it was this for this and that for that. Point is, you don't have to be the best in every single category to be the most wanted, but you got to be pretty good everywhere.
Yeah, you got to be well balanced. And again, the reason in part that we split out these into additional categories, segmented, if you will, is that gives everybody the ability to kind of choose their own adventure a little bit. So if you want to just dive in for forgiveness, or you want to have a formula that makes forgiveness 80% of the score and accuracy 10% and distance 10%, whatever it is, right? Have it your way. But this is how we do it. and this is
Yeah.
our overall winner.
So we
TaylorMade
could,
Stealth 2
yep. So based
Plus.
on our metrics, based on our criteria and how we weight, there it is. But what if I just want the longest driver, Tony? I'm okay. I'm like, hey, you know what? I'll figure out forgiveness on my own. I'm going in, I want horsepower. What is the most horsepower? What was just
Our
long?
longest driver of 2023, Cobra Aerojet LS. There you go.
Okay, so if you want long and you don't want to dive into the data too much, say, hey, based on, what is it, 15, 14,000 shots, whatever it was,
Yeah,
Aerojet,
15 ish, more than
thousand
15. Yeah, it's a lot of shots.
thousand golf shots, Aerojet Aerojet LS. What else was in that category? Lists
TaylorMade Stealth 2 Plus finishes
plus.
second. And in third, the Shrixon ZX5 LS MK, or do we say Mark? I don't know what the pronunciation there is. Do you bivowels? Do you insert R's?
Sure.
We'll call it MK. ZX5 LS MK2 is your third place finisher for distance. Really, really close, though, in our scoring system. And if it's close in our scoring system, it means it's close by actual yardage as well. Third, fourth, fifth, and again, fourth, Stealth 2, fifth, Callaway Paradigm Triple Diamond. Super, super, super narrow margins there for those three. So yeah, there you have it. There's our longest.
There you have. And again, you can cut, you can slice, you can dice it kind of however you want to, and we'll have more articles and things coming out as we kind of slice and dice those up ourselves based on certain things. Maybe it's swing speed, maybe it's on, particular types of bias like fade bias or draw bias or, things like that. But this is the big picture, right? This is kind of the macro level view. And I hit it really, really far, Tony, but I just want accuracy. I'm not saying that's me. I'm saying if I did say that, I need accuracy.
Yeah. So our accuracy category, we aggregate two metrics. That one of these I think came directly from Lou Stagner, and the other we kind of tweaked what he gave us. So the first is what we call straight shot percentage, and you can think of it as an enhanced fairway wood percentage. It sort of normalizes the fairway width based on distance.
So if I hit it a little further, I'm not penalized if it goes a little bit more offline, because it's easier to hit it, 200 yards. But if I hit it 250, 270, 280, we make that fairway a little bit wider the further you hit it, right?
We do a lot of this in our test where, if you want to call the golf course a whole, the field of play, what we do is try and normalize it based on how far golfers hit it, so that in some cases long hitters aren't at a disadvantage, and likewise, because we're aggregating all this data, we also don't want the long hitters to be the guys that count the most in the test. Everything, sure. Try and keep a nice balance. And then the other accuracy metric we use is what we call playable shot percentage. The idea is like, okay, maybe it wasn't awesome, maybe it wasn't in the fairway, but you know what? I'm still going to have a look at a green probably on a golf course. I might be hacking it out of the rough a little bit. Yeah, I'm not over yonder. I'm going to find it. I'm going to hit it. And I've still got a shot at a par from where I am. So those are kind of the two metrics. And so with that build up out of the way, first place, last year's most wanted winner, the Ping G425 Max. Second place, TaylorMade Stealth 2 Plus. Golfers hit it straight. Our testers hit it straight. And so accuracy scored really good. And that's your runner-up. And then third place, the other G Max driver, the G430 Max, finishes third. And again, third, fourth, fifth, pretty tightly bunched. So you got your G430 Max third, Paradigm X fourth, and fifth, the Touareg Exotics E723. And I will say, just in terms of kind of the stretch across the leaderboard, drivers tend to be more similar for accuracy and more similar for forgiveness than they are for distance. There's actually a little more spread in for distance. So just something to think about as you do your driver shopping.
How tightly packed these are, right? I mean, it's good to think of it maybe a little bit like, watching world-class sprinters or something where, a hundredth of a second here, a tenth of a second there could be the difference between first and 11th. But when you look at that in all actuality, right, the pragmatic reality is if it's in the top 10, if it's in the top five, we're just highlighting the top couple, three, four, really look at that separation from maybe very top of the list to what do we test? 35 drivers? Is that
Yeah,
30
I mean,
plus?
and again, this is all, everything falls on a distribution curve. So we would expect that the top two or three, depending on the category, are going to be your standouts. And then your next tier down, it's pretty broad where everything is pretty similar. And yeah, once you get to the bottom, you do have things that stand out for
Other
not so good
reasons.
reasons. But yeah, so
Right.
it's important to kind of keep your head about this a little bit, I think.
Yeah.
So
Well, you got to make sure you know where the clunkers are as well. And we're highlighting those, but we're not saying, geez, if it's not in that top three, it's
yeah,
junk. That's
forget
not it
about
at all.
no,
If
no.
anything, it's just the opposite. So
And you do, and sometimes too, when you get to those bottom stuff, you get some really niche stuff as well. Like we talk about the G430 SFT, we talk about SFT for generations, where if you're looking for distance, it's not going to shine. But if you want a really consistent club that's going to fight your slice better than anything else on the market, yeah, there you go. So different ways to kind of consume it and think about it and things like that, which is again why we break it up the way we do.
yeah, and we talked about this before too, and you'll see more content like this coming from us as we kind of chop up the data and things on our own a little bit too. But question I feel like we get a little bit is, hey, did it do what it was supposed to do? Metric,
Mm-hmm.
like if it's designed as a shovel, how well did it dig? If it's designed to fight a slice, how well did it do what it was intended to do? And again, when we have 15,000 shots and this high level testing, we're not going to get into all those individual scenarios right out of the gate. We will eventually, but right out of the gate, that's not necessarily what each category is testing for. So, like you said, keep your head about some of these things. Forgiveness, um, we all need a little more forgiveness in our life, Tony, don't we? Who
Yeah.
doesn't
So
want a little
forgiveness, real
forgiveness?
quick.
What is it?
Forgiveness, three metrics. We look at ball speed, essentially how close together was the speed of your best shots from your worst shots. So we do that with ball speed. Same metric for carry distance. How close together was your longest from your shortest, and tighter is better. And then the final metric is what we've called shot area or dispersion, which the simple way, there's formula is a little more complex. You're dealing with confidence intervals and things like that. But the really simple way is draw a circle around your shots, and tighter is better. Smaller circle is better.
Smaller ellipses, smaller circles are better. This sounds a little to me like, forgiveness sounds a little bit to me like consistency.
That is what we're
Like,
going for. Forgiveness is a consistency metric, and this is one of the things that gets a little difficult to understand and even stomach in some cases. But yeah, forgiveness is essentially consistency. And so one could argue that if you have a driver, let's say it's a really bad driver, and
mhm,
every shot you hit
right,
goes 90 yards left and 220 yards that way, but
could
they're
be
all
very
right there. Yeah, that's gonna look really good. And it's this is again, it's all what you're looking for. But we think in terms of correlation with MOI, the ball speed metric is probably the closest. But then when we start looking at those other things like shot area and your carry deltas as well, that's where you start to think about practical delivery. So if you're going
yeah,
to do a test on a robot and you're going to clank it off the heel,
fine,
you're probably going to get results that align nicely with
sure,
MOI and things like that. But in reality, if I clank one off the heel, it's probably because I cut across it and left the face wide open. And so that fundamentally changes the dynamics. And this is one of the things we've
right,
talked about before. There are different ways of getting to forgiveness. So MOI is one. Sometimes lower spin drivers, because they tend to have more consistent spin, will
right.
actually produce more consistent results depending on the player. So big picture takeaway on the forgiveness metric is we look at way more than MOI. So
Yeah. So introduction out of the way, but I think this is important because, like, I think coming from a consumer standpoint, thinking like, okay, when I hit it, dead nut center and it's perfect and everything's ideal, I'm going to get great results, right? We've all had those shots. But the question in the forgiveness category really comes into play. When I don't do that, how close are my results to when I do that? So basically, forgiveness too is like, how good are my bad shots? How good are my mediocre shots? And how good are my awful shots?
And there's so much that goes into it too. When you talk about MOI, it's typically, all right, how do we preserve speed all over the face?
Right.
But sometimes, for whatever reason, you'll have a driver with a lower MOI value, but golfers hit it closer to the center more often. So
Right.
that's going to play out as more forgiving because, again, if you're gonna, the most forgiving driver, I've said this before, is the one you hit closest to the center more often, and then you
Yeah.
look at other things obviously, but again, different ways to think about it. It's not just a single value on a gauge or
Hmm.
two values on a gauge if you want to look at heel, toe, and top to bottom.
So
But anyway,
who shined the brightest in forgiveness / consistency?
Tour Edge the Exotics E723, which is the higher MOI of the two Exotics models we tested. Real standout for forgiveness. Again, looking at consistency, maybe not the best result every time, but a consistent result often. How's
Hmm.
that? Ping G430 SFT is the runner-up, and we talked about this one is just for the guy who needs to kill a slice. This is just time and time again hits this list, and again, not the highest MOI of the Ping drivers, but man, does it seem to work for the golfer it needs to work for. And then third place, Callaway Paradigm X, which is an interesting one because this was, if you remember how Callaway kind of positioned these, the X could be a replacement for either the draw model or the standard Rogue, depending on the player. And here we find this, it just holds up really well. Strong showing for Paradigm X as well. And then 4 and 5, TSR3 and Stealth 2 HD. So TSR3 a little bit of an outlier, and that's the one where you're probably benefiting from a head that isn't wildly unforgiving anyway, but also a little
Right.
bit of that low spin benefit we talked about.
I have a question, Tony.
Sure.
So, based on what I just heard you say there, if we include the top 5 models, 3 of the top 5 are the designated draw or draw capable type models, and I
They
don't
are
want to
the
call them.
higher. Yeah, they are the higher MOI offerings.
They tend
And
to be the
really,
high.
yeah.
So
Actually,
that
4 of the 5 really fall into that category. Although, because the SFT isn't the highest MOI offering in the Ping lineup, but it's
it
still
is
pretty good
draw
MOI.
enabled
Yeah,
or draw,
yeah.
whatever you want to call it, right, draw ish, and yeah, just an interesting point of note in there. So, again, you've been looking at this data for weeks. I've been looking at it for minutes, and some things jump out as kind of surprising, and that can be. It's like when I tell my wife, "Oh, that's interesting." She's like, "Interesting how?" Like interesting. So, what jumped out to you, both either good and bad? Because that's part of the reason we test the way that we do, right? Because there are winners and losers, and I know we don't always like that, and that's not fun. Nobody wants to be told they have an ugly baby, but some babies are ugly, and it
Should
happens.
put that on a hat. Ugly
Some babies are
baby.
ugly.
Yeah.
So what surprised you in kind of either direction, good or not so good?
So one of the things that stood out, the Mizuno STX model.
230.
Yes, the 230 STX. It's draw E, right? Draw ish is how Vosch described it. We didn't
Yep.
see that in testing. It actually had a right side bias. And we do wonder, right? You wonder kind of, hey, what happened there? Why did that happen? And one of the things we're looking at, some people have commented in the article. Philip has obviously double checked his measurements, but this is a driver with a stated spec of 45 inches. We measured everything we have at 46. So a little bit of length,
Hmm.
typically a little harder to control. So maybe that's there. So that was a little surprising, obviously, for a couple of reasons. Paradigm X kind of jumped out at me as a positive, like really strong performer from the Callaway lineup, and the Triple Diamond was long for sure, but the
Yeah.
X just seemed to be well balanced. And so this is a case where this is when we look at it and go, okay, let's make sure people understand that maybe this isn't just the draw bias. This is one, a little bit of forgiveness, accuracy. It's not short necessarily. So I think I think, yeah, that was one that kind of stood out on the positive side for me as well.
Yeah, I think quick question to that on that with the Mizuno one, what it made me think of too is sometimes we'll see this stuff in testing where a result doesn't necessarily line up with an intention, meaning you get a model like, let's say in this case, that's designated as draw-ish or draw bias, and say, okay, based on CG location, MOI, all the specs, lie angle, blah blah blah, people should hit this a certain way, and then our testing data goes, but they didn't. So it begs the question, what happened? We saw this with TaylorMade Club not long ago, and part of what we found out in chatting with TaylorMade is they saw some of the same things internally as well in player testing, and it had a lot to do with the visual of what it looked like at address. And because of that visual, there was enough data to support the notion that people did certain things. Maybe it appeared a little bit more open and it changed their swing path a little bit or whatever the case was, and it ended up having more right side bias than the metrics would or the design said it should, which is again another reason you're never going to get that type of result off a robot, right? A
No,
robot
for
isn't going to
sure.
be visually influenced to do something, but in reality say, oh, okay, well, maybe we need to change how we do this because we want it to act a certain way. So it just made me think of that. That's
Yeah,
all.
you do see that sometimes in testing where, and it's probably more prevalent in the driver category than anything else. Where, great example, right? If a guy puts it down and goes, "Oh, this looks closed to me," so he opens it up, and all right, now you've got this draw
Right.
bias driver that is now going right because
Right.
the golfer introduced that right side bias by cranking it open. And it works the other way where, sometimes this looks open and let me close it, and now it's going left, and so, or even I don't like the way this looks. I'm seeing too much loft, so let me try and lean it forward.
Shut
So
it down. Yeah.
yeah, it's just infinite number of ways that a golfer can react to a golf club, whether it's the way it feels. So these, and we looked at the static weight of these Mizunos, they came in a little heavier, and so hey, that could be somebody. Maybe that's what we're seeing in the testing is golfers reacting to the weight. So any number of things can
Yeah.
like that can influence obviously the test itself.
hmm Big surprise for me. Then I know you got, I think, another one on your list there that's kind of interesting. But um, if we look at the survey data from last year, so the consumer survey data, Cobra didn't score as high as I would have scored it individually, right? And again, metrics, big picture, small picture, whatever. But Aerojet LS, distance, feel, the metrics seem to support that. Again, it always seems like it's like most wanted winner adjacent. Like it is right there, and we've said it
You know,
historically.
you know what you know what the data supports.
What does
The
the data
data
support?
the data supports me saying "I told you so." Is what that supports because when we first
Yeah.
saw that one, that was the one I was like,
Yes.
I get it. People, Cobra isn't at the top of anybody's list or not many people's list, but that was one I was hitting. I'm like, this is the sleeper. This is the one that's just
hmm
going to be
Yep.
sneaky. It's not going to work for everybody, but
No.
man, like
No.
if you are kind of that lowish spin guy looking to maximize distance, my God, I
Yeah. That
told you
was my.
so.
Yeah.
I
It's
told you.
Yeah,
It's,
I don't
it's
subscribe to the notion like, oh, Cobra's back. I don't think they ever left in that regard. But
yeah, where'd they go?
if somebody wanted to make the argument that, hey, they finally quote, kind of finally put it together. There were some things about, rad speed that it was like, God, that's really good, but fill in the blank. You know, prior to that speed zone, okay, speed zone, it was really good, except fill in the blank. You can make an argument that they put it all together in Aerojet, and so that was my biggest surprise, kind of looking through this in a positive sense. Is like I said, I told you so. Yeah, that's probably a fair way to say it. So, what else? Anything else jump out to you,
Yeah,
Tony?
just one thing I'll point out. So we've in the past we've asked testers for subjective feedback. We'd be like, hey, tell us what you like. This time we kind of formalized it a little bit more. Actually had them take surveys. So
Yeah.
we asked them to rank looks, sound, feel, and likelihood of purchase. Like, hey, which which of these drivers in the test would you most likely purchase? And while that's, may or may not in some cases be supported by the data, I think it's kind of reflective of what may happen if somebody were to go into this mythical fitting environment and demo 35 drivers, or how many there were. So based on that question, it was really interesting kind of how this shook out at both ends. So for looks, sound, feel, and likelihood of purchase, Titleist TSR3 ran the table. So it was first for all of those things. And that's not to say it was everybody's pick, right? Not everybody picked it first, but it's a 10-point system, and we take an average, and there you go. And so the TSR3 finished tops across the board. So there's your good. Your bad, bottom across the board, was the Tour Edge E7. What number is that? Yes, that would make sense. It's
I got the numbers,
so,
Tony. I'm a numbers guy.
Yeah, and your hat's almost correct too.
It was close.
The E723 was at the bottom for all but one category, and the one that it didn't finish last in, the Tour Edge C723 finished last. So we got some good results out of the E, but it was not popular with testers. So again, a case of data not aligning with perception, which is interesting. Yeah. That is what it is. So there you go. There's your most wanted 23 quick version driver roundup. I'm sure we'll have more to say about it.
We will. And I was going to say, that's my other takeaway.
So did I mention that I told you so? On
you
okay.
Told me so. I told people should have listened. But
listen.
I'm always intrigued, Tony, by what we're going to find when we start digging through this even more. Like I said, there's going to be more tidbits and things that we take out of this as we further analyze for trends and things and all of that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's a lot to go through, and a lot of information, and hopefully consumers find it helpful. If you got more questions, driver stuff, post them. Let us know. We'll see what we can do to help you out. Tony, we all play golf under the influence of marketing.
Transfusions? Oh,
not those kind of influences, but we all play golf under the influence of marketers and things, and some people might find this shocking, but every equipment company, every manufacturer wants to sell you their product. They want to get their product in front of you as often as they can and convince you that it's better than this option, better than that option. It's the option you want, and
that does check out.
It does check out. But we're seeing some shifts in this pyramid of influence. I'm not going to call it a paradigm of influence and shifts, because that'd be tying things together. But things are changing, Tony. Is this a new trend? And specifically, I'm talking about social media teams. NoLayingUp. Good. Barstool Sports as an entity. So social media entities aligning with a single manufacturer. For what purpose? So let's just kind of talk through what's the deal? What's going on here, and why?
It's definitely a shift, or an addition, an enhancement. I don't know. I don't know if we're seeing a total shift, but yeah, you are seeing situations where influencers, and I use that word as a kind of a catch-all, but it means different things. Like NoLayingUp is kind of a unique one, right? Because they do kind of that YouTube influencing stuff, like the
sure
kind of, hey, we're going to go play golf and check this out and show you a cool course and that kind of thing. But also they do sort of, I would say, enhanced media, improved PGA Tour media coverage. So they operate in a couple different spaces. So that's unique. And then,
but they're aligned with Titleist,
right? And really the first of this kind of, call it a media team, a social influencer team, whatever you want to call it, more than one person. They kind of did jump from another OEM, right? Previously affiliated, aligned with Callaway, now with Titleist.
Yep.
But yeah, I think if you look at it fundamentally, coming out of COVID, the idea is all right, hey, golf has changed. We have a new type of golfer. It's not necessarily the country club core anymore. it's younger, it's less formal, less serious, whatever the word is, right? More of a blue jean and
Mm-hmm.
t-shirt, perhaps, right? Much as people hate that. Um, so you've got that going on. So I think, yeah, that fundamentally the game has changed, or who participates in the game has evolved, and it makes sense then that the influencer culture, whether that once upon a time, right, it was your PGA pro or your club pro, we've
Right.
seen it shifting for a while. Influencers aren't new. Maybe this idea of an influential team is a little bit different, kind of the whole team changing uniforms, I guess you would say, but um, yeah, I think I don't know how prevalent it's going to be, because I mean, how many of these groups are there really that are more than one person and have a large following?
What do they do? Like, so I get, the old paradigm, if you will. Okay, your local pro, this person plays X club, got it. Okay, I get these one-on-one associations, right? Maybe to a degree you would see that on tour. Hey, so and so plays, you know, this particular brand of clubs. I like that person. I'm going to play those clubs as well. I get that. We saw it with, we've seen it with Paige. We've seen it with Mark Crossfield. We've seen it with other people where an individual is aligned with a particular brand or company in an effort to, right, create influence. People, oh, I really like what Mark says. Crossfield's a bright guy. He's fun and engaging. I'm going to play blank. But he was with Titleist. Now he's with Strixon, right? So it's like, oh, well, okay, how does that all kind of shake out and work out? What does good do, or what does Barstool do from a marketing branding perspective? What am I supposed to buy because I like Barstool? Or what am I supposed to buy because I like good or No Laying Up or whomever? It doesn't really matter who they are or who they're aligned with. What am I supposed to do as a consumer because of that?
I guess, right? If I think Barstool is cool, or I think Good is cool, and they're affiliated with this brand and they're playing the products and in some cases giving those products away and things like that, well then maybe that brand is cool, and hey, I like those guys, I like this brand, I'm going to play their stuff. I mean, there's definitely, you're at least one step removed from the process, but I think it's just another vehicle to put products in front of faces. I have a buddy who, he doesn't do it anymore, but he worked for a company that basically handled a lot of the ad stuff for bigger companies,
Okay.
distribution, things like that. And basically he's like, look, the strategy is not, it's not rocket science. It's just keep putting it in front of your face. Like if you see it enough times, and there's formulas, like if I see this X number of times, I'm probably going to buy it. So I think it's just
Mm-hmm.
a way to get more eyes on product. And again, if you can draw that, hey, I like these guys and they play Callaway, cool. Callaway's cool. I'm going to play Callaway. Or I love these Barstool guys. And they've got TaylorMade stealths. I'm going to go stealth twos.
So
I'm going to
too.
go do that. And no laying up, right? I love those guys. I follow them, listen to their podcasts. I watch their videos.
Oh, they're titles
Oh
guys. I'm
yeah,
going to buy titles.
Titleist. Yeah, exactly. So that's, I mean, I think it is, sort of a new approach to the same old, same old.
Is it fair to say, because I've already heard some of this, people go, oh, well, I'm not going to buy X because of these yahoos in their YouTube stuff. Is it fair to
It's like,
say, if you're not responding to that, or if you're responding in the get off my lawn kind of way, guess what? They're
yeah,
not trying to market to you. They're trying to market to different demographics and people based on what they think they can sell you. But if you respond to that type of approach negatively, you're probably not the target demographic for that particular
I
medium.
just I can't believe that there was anybody who was like, I'm gonna go buy a Paradigm driver, and then they saw, oh, they signed Good, or they have a partnership with Good. I'm not, no, I'm out. Oh, you're not.
Right.
Because if like you, I just don't know who fundamentally has a problem with it. Because if you truly don't care, then okay, I don't care. Like I don't care, because I don't watch Good, and I don't follow Barstool, and I catch very little of No Laying Up, and I don't mean that to be disrespectful to anybody. I'm fully aware of their size and their scope, and the following they have. It's just like I
Right.
live in this golf stuff every day, so as soon as I step away from the part that directly goes to my job, let's talk about woodworkers on YouTube. Like that's kind of where I'm at right now in my time. So I don't follow golf YouTubers, but I get it. Parallel here is, you can bet, like, I'm like, hey, I like this guy. He seems credible. He seems like a good dude. What
Hmm.
tools is he using? Like, what's he got? What is that saw? Well, all right, I'm going to look at that brand. Maybe I'm not saying I'm going to buy it, but it has
Right.
certainly made me aware of what he has in his toolbox. And I assume it works the same way in golf. And if I see it enough times and I need it, and I'm like, oh, what the guy? Oh, yeah, all right,
Sure.
let's go with that because
Yeah.
I don't know. And that's it. I guess fundamentally it is to appeal to a guy who may not be invested in the level of detail, who's not super engaged with every minute detail of performance and all the stuff that we care very deeply about at My Golf Spy. It is for
Right.
the other guy, that guy who's not going to be as invested in specs, probably isn't going to go get fitted even,
Hmm.
but is just looking for something that, hey, well, I'm looking for something that I think is kind of cool, and I'm going to get steered to that by these guys who I think are kind of cool.
So
So
assuming that,
again, pretty much the same model applied to a different type of golfer.
assuming that money isn't infinite, and companies are watching their dollars closely in terms of what's impactful and what isn't, and how does that work? If we're seeing, maybe more dollars and things, or at least some kind of resources allocated to social media teams, are we seeing it taken away from other traditional forms, like we're going to put a bunch of money into this one professional golfer that plays on tour and hope that that's going to move the needle? Like, are we seeing less of that?
Well, I think the pot of money right now is a little bigger than it's been previously. So I think maybe you're just adding to that bottom line, but I think realistically the market is going to contract, and so decisions maybe in a year or two will have to be made. Do we put this into an an influencer versus a traditional ambassador? And I think maybe the word should be new ambassador versus traditional ambassador.
Sure.
But I think those decisions will need to be made. But I think ultimately at this point, golf companies have hard enough time quantifying how much value they get out of a tour pro, right? Like, and an example I always give, like, who is the needle mover in golf?
Tiger. Tiger
Okay,
Woods.
I think most everybody would agree with it. Nobody's going to come back at me and go, no, Tiger's not the biggest needle mover. Even right now, Tiger is the biggest needle mover. All
Sure.
right,
Tiger's the needle. Yep.
he was Nike Golf for how long? A decade or
Right.
more. That
Right.
company with the needle mover never achieved more. I don't think they got to double digit market share in any category. He did not move the needle. I mean, maybe chances are they'd have been less than nowhere without him,
Right.
but he
Right.
didn't have a substantial influence. He did not catapult them into
Relevance.
exactly. They were never on the same level with TaylorMade or Callaway or Titleist. Tiger Woods could not get them. Little blip. Bridgestone. Tiger is their ambassador.
Right.
Like Bridgestone makes a solid product. I love those guys, but if you look at the market share numbers of the ball that Tiger plays and others like it,
Right.
it barely registers. It's sub 5% and probably half of that.
Right.
So moving the needle on the equipment side, Tiger doesn't do it. I don't know if Good can do it. I don't know if NoLayingUp can really do it, but you are raising awareness against among a different crowd. So maybe, but I think it's going to be so tough to quantify.
Yeah.
And
To
so
what end?
so you don't know, right? The other guy's throwing money at influence. I'm all right. Let's just spread it around and see if we get anywhere. But I
Yeah.
look out. Who's next on the list? Not so much anymore, but once upon a time, right? There was Tiger was number one, and who was the next on the list?
Ricky Fowler.
Ricky Fowler, absolutely. Cobra guy forever, even when he was
Yeah.
playing well. What again?
Right.
They are not in that same tier in terms of dollar share, market share, whatever any kind of sales metric you want to look at. The needle mover did not get them there, or the next guy on that list. So
Right.
you're not going to have a significant impact. Maybe you're trying to stay just a little ahead of the other guy. I don't see much evidence that any guy catapults you. Maybe a group of guys does. I don't know. I mean, certainly
Hmm.
if you look on tour with the Titleist approach, it's not have one big name. It's like just get a lot of people and pay them a little bit.
Yeah. And if they choose to leave, so be it.
Yeah.
Um, seen that with some this year. I think the bigger question is what matters, like it's and to what end, and we're not going to solve that today, but it's like, yeah, how many how much presence do you need to have on the major tours to say that you have tour validated performance? If you're not going to win the count every week or whatever, what's kind of the Moneyball concept, I'm sure, right? Is how much money do we really need to put into these different areas, and what are we getting back? But like you said, if you can't measure those things,
And you
then how
can't.
are you supposed to assess whether they're working or not? So how many clubs does a social media team sell for you in a given year? Don't know. They're going to have to figure those things out, because obviously companies are putting forth money into that. So ultimately they have to figure out if it works for them or not. But one person it's not working for, Tony?
Who's that?
Bryson.
Whew.
We're going to finish up with the mailbag question here that we got,
Big
Tony.
Bryson.
5 minutes. We're
Okay.
gonna spend not more than 5 minutes on this, but the question came in: should any golf equipment company touch Bryson now?
Oh,
Go.
absolutely not. No. I mean, I'm trying to think if there would be a worse, given how much you have to pay traditionally a guy like Bryson. I'm trying to think how worse. Is there a worse way to spend that money? Now, that equation changes if he wins a major, maybe,
Maybe.
but he plays on Live right now, so I
Those
CW. I
opportunities
mean,
are,
I don't know. I don't know how much revenue gets driven by golfers who play on the CW. That remains to be seen. But just historically speaking, this guy is the worst ambassador, perhaps, in the history of the golf
Why do you
ambassadoring
say
game.
that? Why?
My
Why
God.
do you
So
say
the
that?
last one, I mean, granted, he was technically out of contract with Cobra, so a little bit loose here, but played the Stealth 2 driver in a tournament, which probably effectively put the nail in the relationship. So you
Right.
got that. So Cobra guy playing TaylorMade driver. I mean, he's
Oops.
been a Flight Scope ambassador forever. And how many
Mm-hmm.
pictures, videos, whatever you got of him either using, walking around, toting a Foresight GC quad.
Right.
So, Flight Scope pays him. Foresight's reaping the benefits on the other end. And yeah, he uses Flight Scope too, but you see the quad an awful lot in Bryson's hands. Part of the LA Golf ambassador team, I guess, whatever you call that. And he's played a Project X in the same tournament. He's like, I supposedly repping these products, but all the time you can see me with these. I'm guessing he doesn't drive a Bentley or fly NetJets. I think that's at this point.
I bet he drives a Bentley if it's given to him. But I think as companies go through and we're
It's
in a
also insufferable. Let's be honest about that too.
oh god, no kidding. And we're kind of in this dark period here where we don't really know how these things are going to shake out, because so many of the contracts were written without
Pre-live.
any without any type of understanding or ability to change based on the dynamics that we've seen in the last year or two with Live, with these other things. So companies, they're trying to figure this out, right? And so we'll see more and more of this as things come up for renewal and say, okay, now how are we going to address this? But people like Bryson may just be SOL, because one, if you're really, really tough to work with, I think companies are going to take a close, especially if they're able to figure out, and this kind of ties back to our other topic. Let's say Good does sell a lot of clubs for Callaway, which they very well may. Let's say NoLayingUp does help do things for Titleist, which they very well may. They go, why are we busting our asses to work with this
Oh,
petulant middle schooler, and we're paying
yeah.
him X amount when we can get more return by working with people that are in touch or in front of our target audience? Why would we continue to bang our heads
I
against this
mean,
wall?
they
Yeah.
seem like good guys, all of them. They got to be way easier to work with than Bryson. I mean, more fun. Like at some point, you just alleviating headaches for the people who work for your company is a win. And I don't like nobody needs that Bryson headache. Nobody wants that Bryson headache. I mean,
Nope.
doesn't want a guy storming into an R&D room and telling you everything you're doing wrong. You don't want a guy who goes on TV and talks about how the driver you worked with him to
Trashes.
develop sucks. I mean,
Right.
it's ridiculous. I get the argument. Oh, he's on live. He doesn't need their money. I'm like, I get it. He doesn't
Sure.
need the money, but
No.
man, that guy does a
Needs
lot of weird
equipment.
things with equipment, and he needs a lot of support to do all this crackpot mad scientist stuff that he does. And
Uh-huh.
good luck
He
without it.
yeah,
Like
he's
nobody
an
needs
out
that. No, you're on your own. Good luck.
that is the irony of all of this in these individual situations where take somebody else like a Pat Perez. Pat doesn't have the same unique club requirements as somebody else.
This is
Like I'm sure
unique in a different way, but sure.
Patsy, but he could walk into a PJ Superstore and probably get largely,
He'd be
what
in
he
good
needs.
shape.
But Bryson is, single length on his irons. He has these crazy big grips, right? He's the long drive guy trying to do A, B, and C. Like he has these very particular equipment needs, and so what would happen? What happens if this happens, Tony? What happens if he becomes persona non grata? And all the OEMs, all the manufacturers say, nope, sorry. Yeah, well, you can have equipment or whatever, but we're not going to help you. Where does Bryson think he's going to go? Because the best minds in R&D, the best, most equipped individuals to help solve these problems for him are exactly the people that he's pissed off and frankly should just say, you know what, Bryce, you go figure it out. You're not worth the trouble. Where's he going to go?
I mean, I do wonder.
I don't know.
We know he was at Ping, messing
Yeah.
around with some stuff, and those
Yeah.
guys they're about as curious as they come in this industry, and so maybe they might take him out as a project because it allows them to dig down into some crazy rabbit hole that they were just looking for an excuse to go down anyway. But
Right.
man, at some point it's not worth the headache, and maybe if it's not a financial relationship necessarily, if it's we'll work with you, we're not going to pay you anything, but we'll work with you because we think this is
Right.
worth pursuing because we like to pursue wacky things,
Right.
maybe, and that's probably the best case scenario. But at some
Yeah.
point, like, you just get tired of
But even so, in that situation,
the bulge and roll is all wrong on this, you guys don't know what you're doing kind of thing. It's like,
right. I highly doubt Bryson would be sitting there telling. Yeah, Bryson's not going to sit there and tell Marty Jertson what to do. Bryson's not going to sit there and tell,
you think?
well, I think may
I
try,
bet
but I
against
mean,
you.
yeah, I mean, no one, again, guys being exceptionally intelligent with what they do. I don't see that power dynamic shifting me like, oh, okay, Anyway,
Crap.
sorry for the little rant. 5 good minutes on a great mailbag topic. Maybe there will be more, but as always, find us, GolfSpy T, GolfSpy C. We're out on the interwebs. Questions. Ask us questions about the most wanted stuff, about the testing. What can we do? What other information would you find helpful? And Tony will get right on that. I guarantee you, he's got he's got nothing but time on his hands,
Nothing
guys.
but time. Free
Nothing
time.
but time. But until next time, we out.